He was arrested in Texas in March after withdrawing money from Koenig's bank account, ending his cross-country killing spree.
Good afternoon and welcome to True Crime Mysteries. If you're new to the channel, hello and welcome, and if you're returning, welcome back. We are jumping right back into the serial killer series. If you've not watched part 1 or 2 yet, I would highly recommend you pause this one and watch those ones first. If you could hit the like button and comment down below, that would be so much appreciated, as engagement helps my content to grow. And of course, if you're new here, please subscribe and hit the little bell icon so you never miss an upload, because I'm bad at keeping a schedule. Today we are discussing the serial killer deep dive into Israel Keyes part 3. Let's get into it. Upon Israel's arrest, he initially was held in Texas until he was extradited back to Anchorage, a legal process that took 2 weeks. FBI agents took over the investigation, which initially had the primary focus of locating Samantha Koenig, who at this point had been missing for over 2 months. While Israel was still in Texas, the FBI raided and tore through the house he shared with his girlfriend, Kimberly. They seized electronic devices, Keyes' vehicle, journals, and searched for any clues of Samantha. Kimberly was initially uncooperative with officers, believing Keyes was innocent. After his arrest, his mother and Tammy were both interviewed, and officers were intrigued that neither of those women were surprised or shocked by the allegations. They were both fully cooperative with law enforcement. His mother, Heidi, revealed that while Israel had been in Texas, he was acting very odd. She said that he had been unusually emotional and agitated. She said that he had also visited her on February 13th, 2 weeks after Samantha's disappearance, and she said that that visit had also been odd. She said that he had snuck out in the middle of the night, leaving a note in his room, "Gone to fix the window and find a place to hide my guns." Heidi had said that wasn't entirely unusual behavior, and at the time it made rational sense. Israel liked guns, and the windshield on his rental car had cracked on his drive up. He had left his daughter with Heidi and only answered messages sporadically, but had been gone for 2 nights. On the 3rd day, he said that he was stranded in another town an hour away from where he had left. When they found him, he was disheveled, he and the car were covered in mud, and Israel was acting completely out of character. He was talking a mile a minute, with a litany of excuses, attempting to explain where he'd been for 2 days. He normally was calm, cool, and collected, but that wasn't what was happening now. They went back to Heidi's home, and again Israel disappeared several more times. No one asked Israel to explain any further, and he didn't provide any details of where he had been. Heidi mentioned that she'd noticed Israel had been drinking heavily, much more than she'd seen in years past. He was also willing to talk to her church's elders, which was also notable since he had taken such a strong stance of anti-religion in the past. Right before his flights back to Anchorage, he gave Heidi $900 in cash to pay her back. Then he and his daughter flew back to Alaska on the 18th. Once Keyes was back in Anchorage after his extradition, he told officers he wanted to talk. Keyes was realistic about his circumstances and told officers that if his demands were met, he was an open book. Initially, his demands were that the death penalty would be off the table and that he wanted what he was going to tell officers to stay out of the media. He didn't want his crimes to impact his family, particularly his young daughter. He didn't want his daughter to Google his name and have his crimes attached to him.
Really big concern to me is, my kid's going to be around. I don't want her to, type my name in the computer and have it pop up.
At the time of his arrest, the FBI had very little to tie him to Samantha's disappearance. All they had was the fraudulent use of a credit card. Though in their first interview with KEYES, it was clear that he believed they had a lot more information on him, and the FBI had to keep up that belief. They decided to go through the evidence in chronological order. They showed KEYES photos from the ATMs, clothing from the rentals that matched the photos, Samantha's debit card in his wallet as well as her cell phone, along with disturbing material on his computer's hard drive. They had also revealed that they had already interviewed Heidi and Tammy, threatening to release embarrassing details about his life to the press. In the first interview with KEYES, he opened up right away and began with the events on February 1st, when he kidnapped Samantha. He said that he had selected the Common Grounds coffee stand because it was open later than the other cafes, and he could see only one girl closing most nights. He had picked February 1st because there was a festival on the other side of town, and most police officers and residents would be there. He had observed the kiosk for several evenings to get a sense of the routine. Initially, he had only planned to rob the coffee stand. He said that he had never met or knew Samantha prior to abducting her. He had waited in his truck until it was close to closing before he went up to the kiosk. He noticed that the girl on shift didn't have a vehicle, as there wasn't one in the parking lot. He wore a ski mask as well as a police scanner in his ear and ordered a coffee. Samantha made the drink, an Americano, and handed it back to him. He made sure to examine the coffee stand carefully, confirming that she was alone. That was when he pulled out a gun and demanded her to hand over the money in the cash register. He directed her to turn the lights off, then told her to get the money from the cash register. Samantha had told him that her father was on the way to bring her dinner, but slipped up, first saying he would be there in half an hour, then correcting to say he was on the way. At that moment, KEYES decided to kidnap Samantha. He said it hadn't been planned, and it was a spur-of-the-moment decision, based on the adrenaline rush from the robbery. Though it went against his rule, don't commit crimes where you live. He lifted himself into the kiosk window and told Samantha to get down. He warned her to not cause any trouble, and he told her he had an earpiece connected to a police scanner, so he would know if anything was to go down. He told her he was going to kidnap her for ransom, saying to her, "I don't want to hurt you, but this .22 is loaded with very quiet ammo. It will kill you, so don't make me do it." He bound her hands behind her using zip ties. He closed and locked the kiosk windows, and took a stack of napkins and stuffed them in Samantha's mouth. He led Samantha out of the kiosk and towards his truck, but as KEYES hadn't planned on taking a victim or using his personal vehicle, he needed to clear the passenger seat off. For hours he drove her around in his truck. He said that he explained what was going to happen with the ransom. He said that he tried to keep her calm, and he was trying to act like a normal person, implying that he knew he wasn't a normal person, and he had likely done this before. At one point, he even had to return to the coffee stand to retrieve Samantha's car keys and phone so he could send a message to her boss and her boyfriend Dwayne. Around 2 a.m., he brought her back to the shed in his backyard. His daughter and girlfriend were asleep in the house. He was leaving for a pre-planned trip later that morning. He knew he would need to get his daughter up in a couple hours, and he'd already ordered a cab to take him to the airport at 5 a.m. He went back to the shed and spoke to the now-tied Samantha and turned on a radio, blasting heavy metal music. "I'll make you comfortable," he told her. "You just sit here, but I'm gonna have this police scanner on me, so if I hear reports of screaming from this neighborhood or anything, any disturbance from over here, I'm gonna be back here before the cops." He asked where her debit or credit card was. She said that she shared a bank account with her boyfriend and the debit card was in their truck. He got her home address and got back to the truck and then got back in his vehicle to retrieve it. That was when he had that encounter with Dwayne on the back porch. But he was able to get the card. He went back to the shed and got the pin from Samantha, which he carved into the card. With 5 a.m. quickly approaching, he sexually assaulted Samantha, strangled her, and then locked the shed up, showered, got changed. He then went back to the shed, rolled her body into a tarp, and hid her in a cupboard in the shed. He double-locked the shed, then he left for Alaska for his cruise. Investigators asked him, "Was she alive when you left?" KEYES said, "That would seem like an obvious question." So she was alive? KEYES then said, "When I left? No." Keyes was asked if he was concerned about leaving Samantha's body in his shed while he went away. He said he wasn't concerned. He was confident that they would never be able to tie him to her abduction. He said that he'd been listening to the police scanners, and based on what he heard, he knew that the Anchorage police were already facing dead ends. Keyes decided to make some additional demands before he gave investigators more information. He wanted them to stop questioning Kimberly, as he insisted she never had anything to do with his crimes. He also wanted officers to stop searching their home. He would give them what they needed, but the random searches needed to end, and they would need to get his permission to search. "I don't want to hear about you questioning her again," Keyes told agents.
There is no one who knows me, or who has ever known me, who knows anything about me, really. They're going to tell you something that does not line up with anything I tell you because I'm two different people, basically. And the only person who knows about the kind of things I'm telling you is me.
How long have you been two different people?
Long time. 14 years.
Keyes said that he returned on February 18th. He said that he had continued to check the weather in Anchorage. When his daughter went to school on Monday, February 22nd, he began to dismantle the shed, working from the inside first. He was burning wood from the shed and working around the cupboard containing Samantha's body. He also burned his clothing and shoes he had worn, as well as her purse, keeping only the cell phone and debit card. Once he had made more space inside the shed, he got her body out of the cupboard to prepare for his next move. Samantha's body had been mostly unchanged at the time due to the cold preserving the body. He purchased a bunch of makeup and decided to try and take a photo to show proof of life for the ransom. The newspaper he had used was from February 13th, a day he chose specifically because it was a day when he wasn't in Anchorage. He applied the makeup, but wasn't enough to make her look lively. He used fishing line to sew her eyes open, along with clear tape to make her look like she had life. He braided her hair and propped up her body, and took a photo using a Polaroid camera. He then also admitted to defiling her body. The ransom note was typed up using a manual typewriter he got at the Goodwill, and he photocopied the Polaroid to make it an even lower quality photograph. He then placed the ransom note on the bulletin board and used Samantha's cell phone to send the text message. He said that he had decided on the $30,000 because that was how much had been raised by Samantha's father. When he sent the text using Samantha's phone, he said that he had parked nearby the ransom note and waited for officers to arrive. He watched agents, a CSI van, and officers investigate the scene. He watched them for a while before going home. Agents said that while Keyes had been retelling the events of Samantha's murder, Keyes would go into a trance-like state, reliving the events with guilt, shame, but also excitement. While in his trance, he went into detail and included his thought process behind his decisions. He seemed relieved to talk to someone about it, and the agents knew it was imperative to not act shocked or disgusted despite their feelings to the contrary. The more comfortable Keyes was, the more information could be gained with his trust. He revealed the location of Samantha's body. He had dismembered the body over the course of several days. He would pack out storage bins with parts and dump it into the Matanuska Lake, an hour away from Anchorage, using an ice fishing shed he had already built. He thought dumping the body over several trips would be unsuspicious, as it was common for ice fishers to bring a few things with them. He even recounted seeing other people at the lake. He said that he had struggled to use a chainsaw to cut a hole through the ice, and remembered another fisherman looking at him quizzically, wondering why he didn't ask to use his ice drill. He said that he weighed the remains, and once the body was completely disposed of, he dismantled the fishing shack and tried to hide as much evidence as possible, though he wasn't able to get rid of everything before he was called about his sister's wedding in Texas. Samantha's body was recovered by specialized divers on April 2nd, 2012, a tragic end to those who had hoped for a different ending. With Keyes' confession, the FBI now had evidence needed to charge Israel Keyes with the murder of Samantha Koenig. It also opened up the door for Keyes to talk about his other crimes that the FBI had no idea about. Though they had a hunch that Keyes had done this before, they had no evidence to connect him, It was now up to FBI officials to get as much information as possible out of Israel Keyes. So that is where we're going to end this video. In part 4, we will wrap up the series covering his other confessions and potential other crimes. As always, please give this video a thumbs up if you like the content and subscribe for more if you haven't already. If you've done all that and want to support me and the channel, we have channel membership as well as Patreon to get early access, members only content, and more. We also have merch and other goodies in the description box below, as well as links to all my socials. But until then, I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.